Hey folks, welcome to the Sidewalk Congress, where your hosts Hal and Aaron delve into the pulse of current politics and news from a thoughtful, conservative perspective. We're here to break down the latest news headlines that you may have missed and explore the nuances of politics and policy, all while engaging in lively debates and discussions. Make sure you never miss an episode by following us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram for updates about what we have going on. And if you want to follow Hal Walker, you can find him on X, and his handle is @RealHalWalker. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Let's dive into today's discussion.
To honor America with the performance of the national anthem, 8-time Grammy Award winner, Chris Stapleton.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular amongst birds singing out, yeah, through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Hey guys, it's Hal Walker with the Sidewalk Congress, and there is no better way to start today's show than with a little Chris Stapleton doing the national anthem. This was from the Super Bowl from a few years back. I'm sure he won't mind us using that. So we are here celebrating today. It is November the 8th. It is 3 days post-election, and as you know by now, Trump won. So it's a great day. America's on its way back. Of course, we've got quite a bit we've got to get through. There's just problems that are going to crop up, and they've already begun. It reminds me a lot of 2016 when Trump beat Hillary Clinton. All the people were freaking out. All the women were acting out as if it was some type of conspiracy against the female race. But it's not. The country came together and voted, and Trump came out with a majority, and that's just the way it is. Every 4 years, that's the way it happens. So I'm going to play some clips today. We're going to be a little clip heavy. This first clip is the beginning of the final push. This is election night. And, as we came into the election, we knew there was a handful of swing states that whoever pulled those states was going to pull out this election. When you look at the Democrats and the Republicans, you can kind of look at states and go, okay, these people follow the Republicans. California, for instance, follows the Democrats. Well, heck, on the West Coast of the United States, it's made up of 3 states, Washington, Oregon, and California. Those typically go Democratic, and they did that night. But here's a clip from our first swing state that came out.
Gentlemen, we are now projecting that Donald J. Trump will win the state of Pennsylvania. Former President Donald J. Trump will win the state of Pennsylvania, and thereby he is on his way to becoming the 47th president of the United States. With this, the path for Vice President Harris has narrowed, and there's really no path going forward. It's vanished. This is historic. Everything was about Pennsylvania. Everything from the beginning was about Pennsylvania. Now, former President Trump will win the state of Pennsylvania, and we can make that call, the 19 electoral votes. That puts him at 267, not officially over the 270, but the path that it takes to get to 270, he is well on his way to becoming the 47th president of the United States in what is going to be the biggest political phoenix from the ashes story that we have ever seen, ever. I mean, I'm going to say it's more than Grover Cleveland in
1892.
1892.
Grover Cleveland was not the subject of a Russia investigation, 2 impeachments, 2 assassination attempts.
Indictments.
They have indictments, 91 indictments, convictions, and there is almost nothing that hasn't been thrown at this former president. And his tenacity in wanting to go back and run again, which he announced immediately after he lost in 2020. This is a huge historic moment in the United States of America as the former President Trump is closing in with just a few electoral votes away now from clinching 270 as Pennsylvania is called for Donald Trump.
We're looking live, 1:21 a.m. in the morning at Trump headquarters. The cheers coming up. We're told the former president is there, as well as J.D. Vance, Senator J.D. Vance. They are getting ready to hear from former President Donald Trump. Again, at 267, not there yet, but looking at where that vote is in Wisconsin, where the vote is in Michigan, where the vote is in Nevada and in Arizona. There is no path, Brit Hume, for Vice President Harris, and just 30,000 feet. Is this a call, ladies and gentlemen?
So, guys, when you look at this, it's just amazing. You know, you've got Pennsylvania, and let's look at the map. Pennsylvania, looking for votes in Pennsylvania. It's not going to give it to me. But Pennsylvania was the first swing state that turned that evening, and you heard Brett Baer from Fox News say that it was about 1:21 in the evening. So, you know, by that time, polls had been closed since probably 7 o'clock Eastern time. So, you know, that was a long time it took to get those votes in. And what's amazing is states like Florida that have a similar number of people were able to get their returns in much earlier. But that was just the beginning of the red wave, folks. The other swing states that eventually followed Trump were North Carolina, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada. So it was because he pulled those that he pulled everything out. The final count, and they're still showing some numbers that are pending, but it looks like 324 electoral college votes for Trump and quite a few less for Harris, folks. So what we're running into now is, first of all, Kamala as a Kamala example. This is what she was. This is what she is. And thank the Lord that she's not going to be our president in a few months. But that night when things were going south, she just disappeared. She sent one of her peons out to speak to the crowd that had met to encourage her as the returns came in. And he just announced that she'll get with you in the future and sent everybody home. You know, the next day, the financial markets were on fire. They were soaring. Everything's going up. Everybody knows Trump was a president before. Of course, he's like Grover Cleveland in that he did not have back-to-back times as the president, but had a gap in between. But because he was president before, everybody knew what to expect out of him. But now we're expecting better things because he learned a lot those 4 years. But with that being said, the financial markets have been soaring. I've had friends calling me up going, hey, do you have any of this stock? Look what it's doing. everybody is excited about the future except for the Democrats. The Democrats are back to their same old things. But before we get to what they say, let's listen to the call on the win that night.
The Fox News decision desk can now officially project that Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States.
The former president's comeback will be complete with a win in Wisconsin, a state that he narrowly lost 4 years ago. He is now the second president in U.S. history to win non-consecutive terms. The first was Grover Cleveland in the late 1800s. Senator J.D. Vance will become the 50th vice president of the United States. Voters expressed deep frustration with the Biden administration, and former President Trump and the future President Trump overperformed in urban areas, particularly with men, proving that the strategy that they doubled and tripled down on over the course of the last few months absolutely succeeded and brought him back to the White House.
47th president of the United States. Former President Trump now defeats Vice President Kamala Harris, who entered this race just over 100 days ago. And for Democrats, they were projecting the possibility of running the table with battleground states. David Plouffe with the Democratic campaign of Harris campaign suggested that just yesterday. Now it is possible that Donald Trump runs the table with these states and builds on a big landslide electoral win. We don't know where the popular vote is going to finish out, but we do know that he will be going back to the White House, and with him, Brit Hume, will be a lot of changes because he will have been there once and will know what he wants to do. The Fox News decision desk can now officially...
Folks, it's clear. He won big. He really amazed people. And see, in my opinion, one thing that really needs to take place is just like when you go to a movie and they have things rated as G or PG or R, or I know there's even some further than that, but we're not going to talk about those ratings. But we almost need to have ratings on news. We need to qualify information as news, which I would call trustworthy, verified, vetted, real stuff, and then qualify it as opinion pieces. And that has become mixed up in all of this over the past probably 10 years. At one point, the Democrats and the Republicans, much like the CNNs and MSNBCs and Fox Newses, they were all kind of similar. They were not very far apart. They kind of took news and put it out about the same way for us. But, just as they said earlier during the announcement, just a couple days ago, the news was running information that Kamala's campaign believed they were going to pull all of the swing states. Well, that's probably not news. And when you look at what the other news stations were doing, if you looked at their information, if you looked at their polling, they were like, Kamala is going to win this, Kamala's going to win this. Every poll that they showed had President Trump trailing by 3, 4, 5 points, depending on where they were. But, people look at that on the television and they're like, wow, that must be the truth. They're putting that out on the news. Well, folks, it's not true, and we need to do something about that. So now, as I promised before, we're going to get into some of the whining, some of the Democratic whining, and it's classic stuff. It's good stuff. I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. First one is Joy Reid. She's an opinion piece type person. I don't know how she did it, but she actually has a degree from Harvard University. But allegedly, they're smart people. Maybe they're just folks that have a lot of money that can afford to go there. But, for long periods of time, we've understood that graduates from there have a very liberal thought process. And here she goes. She's going to blast some folks about the results of this election.
Yet it was the hip-hop and Hulk Hogan generation, the F Your Feelings latchkey kids who came up on Dynasty, Dallas, and The Apprentice, who were the lone age group that voted in a majority for Trump. A majority of Gen X voted to turn America into an autocracy. and to condemn our kids and grandkids to a far-right Supreme Court, probably for the rest of their lives. And it was not just Gen X, because while 91% of black women voted for Kamala Harris, 53% of white women overall voted for Trump, despite the open disrespect and demonization hurled by J.D. Vance and the Supreme Court stripping women's bodily autonomy, courtesy of Donald Trump, who closed his repulsive campaign by dropping the B word on Nancy Pelosi. The breakdown by education was stark. Harris won 57% of white women with college degrees and lost 63% of white women without them. It was also men. Trump won every age group of men, including 60% of Gen X men and 6 in 10 white men. Also Latino men, who despite the utter disrespect shown by Trump and his promise to deport some of your mixed status families, most of them voted in a 55% majority to make the deportations happen.
Folks, that was just the beginning of it. Joy Reid, she's always been a nutcase. She's always been a Trump hater. She hates what America has become, what the flag stands for, you know, what the Constitution says, what patriotism is. It's all about her and her people. And I'm not just talking about black people. I'm talking about just liberal nuts like her that believe, you know, abortion should be on demand. You know, the Supreme Court needs to be packed because they're giving decisions we don't like. Well, there's a reason why things are set up the way they are. It's because people smarter than us at the formation of this country, you know, set up a constitution that kind of led us down this path. And that is why the United States is the greatest country in the world. We may not appear that way now because of poor leadership, but we will be back there soon. So here's some more whiners. Y'all listen to this. Have a good laugh.
So again, I'm profoundly disturbed that the 14th Amendment of the Constitution did not prevent someone who participated in an insurrection from becoming president of the United States. I think that going forward, the convicted felon box on employment applications better be taken off, because if you can be the president of the United States, then you should not be prevented from employment in this country, because I remember applying for my jobs as a federal prosecutor, and there was a box for convicted felons.
We're all going to have to wake up tomorrow morning and work like hell to move the world to the place that we prefer it to be. And I just want to point out, just as a matter of perspective, that the lessons that our pundits take away from these results, that they will pronounce with certainty, will be wrong. And we have to remember that.
I literally could go on all day. And yet you talk to Trump voters and they'll go, he didn't say that. Wait, no, I didn't hear him. And then you say, well, here's the quote. And then they'll go, yeah, he didn't mean that.
I didn't expect it to be this resounding. And I think there are some lessons from it. I think we forget about rural America. I think the working class feels left behind. They feel like the powerful, the elite only care about them and their power. And he spoke to them. We may not have liked his words, but they turned out for him.
It's not the elite that's going to pay the price. It's people who woke up this morning with a dream and are going to bed with a nightmare. And those people didn't deserve to be respected and held and talked to. Those are the people who are going to pay the price for whatever Donald Trump decides to do.
I'm mystified in some ways. Who are we as a country? And we're starting to find out.
I think this is a big, huge part of the story that it's hard to even digest fully at this moment. But you have Elon Musk, who owns Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it these days, X, who is a disinformation propagandist and now has a direct,
Folks, we know from this information that the Democrats are mad. We've seen it before in 2016, you know, back when Hillary thought she was going to be the winner and everyone came out crying. You know, she was going to be the future of America. Kumbaya, you know, peace, tranquility, you know, liberal markets, you know, liberal decisions, you know, just all that crap. But it didn't happen, so they are on the warpath. They are complaining, and we get that, but it's fun. So let's listen to this nut job from the University of Oregon. Apparently, he was some type of administrator out there, And since this video went out on, I believe it was TikTok, we found it on X, which is a great source for information. Thank you, Elon Musk, for saving America, purchasing Twitter and putting it back out there. But let's listen to this guy. He was since suspended, given a few days off from his university job in Oregon, which as a liberal state is a bit of a head scratcher. But here we go.
I'm done crying. My sadness is over. My anger has set in. I am a very petty person, and I am very proud of that. Love it about myself, actually. And so I say this in the most disrespectful way possible. I don't care if you are my family. I don't care if you're my friend. I don't care if we've been friends our entire lives. You can literally go fuck yourself if you voted for Donald Trump. If you are so sad about your groceries being expensive, get a better fucking paying job. Do better in life. Get a fucking education. Do something. Because you are fucking stupid. And I hope you go jump off of a fucking bridge.
Well, this is a fine American, isn't he? First of all, we apologize for that language. We're going to have to make sure that this podcast is labeled accordingly. But, he was the minority. His people that voted for Kamala Harris did not win this election. When you look at the map, Kamala looks like she won, I believe, 16 states, folks, out of the whole country. 16 states. Trump had 324 electoral college votes. The people have spoken, bud. You need to get over it. Quit being so sensitive. Go read my book. It's okay to be offended, because it is. Nobody gets exactly what they want all the time, and that's the problem. We've got a microwave society now that wants their breakfast hot in the morning after about 3 minutes, where when we were kids growing up, if we wanted a leftover donut that was already hard as a rock, we had to fire up the oven, probably a gas oven, maybe even with a match, and put it in tinfoil and wait like 30 minutes before we could eat that hot donut. And now it's just thrown into a microwave. Well, that is implored upon people a mindset of, I want it now, let's get it now. Here's the stranger thing that's happening, folks. I am glad that I'm not a liberal. I am thrilled to death that I've got a great wife of 30 years almost. If you're a liberal and for some reason you crossed over, and especially the men, if you voted for Donald Trump and you have a liberal girlfriend or a liberal wife that was a Kamala supporter, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble. Listen to this video.
Not that my content reaches a lot of men because I have an IQ of 130, but I want the men in this country to know that half the female population, we're dry. We're probably going to stay dry. I'm dry as a desert, baby, and I don't want it to change. Yeah, we're not going to like you anymore. You understand that? Like, it doesn't matter if you take away abortion. Like, we'll want to have your babies even less, right? Even if you take away contraception, like, women are really good at celibacy because you guys are actually a threat to us. So we have a lot less to gain from you. So yeah, 4B all the way. Let's make some money, I guess. That's all we can do now.
Well, if you can read between the lines on that one, and again, this is apparently not a kid's show. If your wife or girlfriend was a liberal Kamala supporter and you voted for the other side, it sounds like you might as well get you an Ozzie and Harriet bedroom where you're both in single beds, or go to the couch or the guest room or whatever, because it sounds like any days of nighttime wrestling are over. And it's just amazing that they are taking this position, because it was not a vote based upon male and female. When you look at Kamala's plan for the United States, it included higher taxes for unrealized capital gains. Well, who the hell wants that? Who wants to live in a house for 20 years and have it worth 30, 40, 50% more than they paid for it and have to go take out a loan to pay taxes on that difference between your basis and what it's worth today when you've not realized that gain yet. That's what she wanted you to do. She also wanted to give everyone $25,000 to go get a new home. Well, all that will do is push up the price of new homes by $25,000. You're not going to get that money. Someone else is going to get that money. But, Trump has come out with a statement. We're going to kind of close the show out with that, breaking down what he's going to do immediately after being sworn in. But there are folks out there in liberal states that are not going to follow the federal law. And they're already telling people that. Let's listen to the governor of Illinois and what he says about the illegal immigrants in his state, which Kamala did win, probably because his illegal immigrants voted. But let's listen to what he has to say.
One who intends to come take away the freedom and opportunity and dignity of Illinoisans, I would remind you that a happy warrior is still a warrior. You come for my people, you come through me. One who intends to...
Wow. Go through him to get to the illegal immigrants. His people is what he's calling them. Well, are they contributing to society? Are they working? Are they paying taxes? Or are they in free housing, getting food stamps and debit cards? Are we supporting them, or are they contributing something to this country? And I think that's exactly what it's going to come down to with this mass deportation plan that Trump's talking about. I think we need to look at the individual and say, what do you bring to the mix? Years ago, I had clients that were from Wales, and for them to be able to come here on a visa and start a business, I think they had to bring in a couple $1 million investment to qualify. If they weren't highly educated people, like engineers and such, they had to bring in a ton of money. Well, we got a lot of folks that showed up with their shirts on their back that just looking for handouts. And, it's probably a similar scenario, but years ago, a bunch of us went to Jamaica, and I remember talking to a guy down there, and school wasn't free. There were no public benefits. So, they were picking up coconuts, they were doing this, they were doing that. They were trying to make $1 any way they could because there was no one down there that was just going to toss money their way because they were needy. And that created an attitude of, we need to get to work. And I think that's something that the United States needs to look at as well. So going back to the fight, the LawFare, I don't necessarily believe it's over. There's been some statements made recently. We've got Letitia James, who is the AG for the state of New York. And Trump actually won the state of New York, just not the city and a few outlying counties. But Letitia has come out with some information, and she led the charge against him in New York. He's still got some pending cases there that they're looking to sentence him on in the future. But let's listen to what she has to say, and then we've got a pretty strong response from Mike Davis, who's an attorney who has done some work for Trump in the past.
New York Attorney Letitia James is speaking here about how her office is going to respond to a Trump presidency. Let's listen in for a moment.
With other Democratic AGs across this country to make sure that we would be ready to respond to any attempt to roll back our rights. So here we are. We've studied their platforms. We've identified certain possibilities, fact patterns. We've created contingency plans. So no matter what the next administration throws at us, we're ready. We're ready to respond to their attacks. We're ready to respond to any attempts to cut or eliminate any funding to the great state of New York, as the governor outlined. So despite what has happened on the national stage, we will continue to stand tall in the face of injustice, revenge, or retribution. We will continue to protect and our most vulnerable and marginalized amongst us. Because it is my sworn duty and responsibility to lead that fight, working with the governor of this great state, Kathy Hochul.
So when you look at that and you listen to that statement, it sounds like Letitia James is saying, I'm going to do what it takes to, again, protect the illegal aliens or illegal immigrants that are in New York. Well, if you've been to New York City lately, they're all over the place. They're living in schools, they're living in gyms, they're not contributing, for the most part, anything. If they are contributing something, they're most likely being paid cash by ruthless employers. So much for matching FICA and retirement, and paying taxes and things like that on that income. That doesn't happen when you're receiving cash for your job. But Letitia James seems to think she's going to stand up to the federal government and protect these people and maybe even continue her processes towards prosecuting Trump. Not long after she put that statement out, Mike Davis, who again has represented Trump in the past, came out. And this comment's a little salty, but hold on and let's listen to what Mike has to say.
Let me just say this to Big Tish James, the New York Attorney General. I dare you to try to continue your lawfare against President Trump in his second term, because listen here, sweetheart, we're not messing around this time, and we will put your fat ass in prison for conspiracy against rights. And I promise you that. So think long and hard before you want to violate President Trump's constitutional rights or any other American's constitutional rights. It's not going to happen again.
We've been warning people on the show, Mike, this isn't the same Trump administration. Stop messing around. Don't rig elections. Don't illegally vote. Don't try the funny business, because we know the team this time and they are not effing around.
So Mike has stepped up and said, I wouldn't do it if I was you. So, we've had a lot of great patriots that were on X as we were approaching these elections. And another one of them, if you've never heard of her, Julie Kelly, she's wrote some great articles and is very knowledgeable of the January 6th information and the indictments and the arrests that occurred there. She recently was on the Benny Johnson show, and she's got some strong opinions about what should happen with a lot of the turncoats that are DC employees that operated in a way that was not favorable to the U.S. government. Let's listen to what Julie Kelly has to say.
I certainly am no constitutional scholar. I just simply have conversations. I run a talk show here where I talk with smart people, okay? And maybe some of it'll rub off. But it doesn't make any sense to me why there would be federal judges inside of a place that isn't even real. Washington, D.C. isn't a state. It's not real. Its members can't vote. The people they send to Congress don't even vote, right? Eleanor Holmes Norton. Why are we giving full jurisdiction and the capacity to assault and destroy these Americans' lives? Why does the federal court, why does that system even exist in Washington, D.C.? Why mustn't it be something that is outside in a actual real state, even if it is Maryland or Virginia? It seems insane to me, actually. D.C. used to be run by Congress. We used to have the Speaker of the House was like the mayor of D.C., effectively. It was just seen as a federal city, and it wasn't a real place. It was never designed to be a real place, actually.
Right. I mean, I would implore Donald Trump to sign an executive order shutting down the D.C. federal court system, shutting down the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office, and shutting down the Washington FBI field office. This is the axis of evil.
Enough.
This is the rot in our political system. They all work together, Benny. I've seen it. Half of the judges on the D.C. bench came out of the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. These are their colleagues. These are their buddies. These are the people whose kids go to private schools together. It's not a joke when, we make fun of the cocktail parties in Georgetown. It is a cabal. They all are from the same area. They went to the same schools. No one is going to step out of line. And I'll tell you what, some of the worst judges were appointed by Donald Trump. Now, I talked to him about this 2 years ago. And of course, he's taking recommendations like you do from people who, the Federalist Society and others. One of the worst judges in Washington, Tim Kelly, whose wife works for the mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser. He was a D.C. A prosecutor in the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. I watched in his courtroom how he systematically denied the rights of the J6 defendants before him, including the Proud Boys, refusing to allow evidence to be entered into the court, is including FBI informants. He fought harder than the prosecutors did to make sure that these J6 defendants had the book thrown at them, seditious conspiracy convictions, 22 years in prison for Enrique Terrio, who was in Baltimore on January 6th. I mean, we could go through it, but those are the high profile cases. I've also seen the lower defendants charged with misdemeanors. I was in Washington courtroom last week where the DOJ went back and wanted to put a 60-year-old woman, a widow, just lost her husband of 40 years to liver cancer. She spent 3.5 months in a dirty, crime-ridden federal prison in Philadelphia on 4 misdemeanors and the obstruction conviction that was overturned by the Supreme Court. The DOJ wanted to put her back in prison. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. So I'm sorry for the rant, but again, thank you so much for covering this. But we need to get this to the right people. They need to understand what really happened here. Because until you have a full understanding and grasp of the inhumanity, the sadistic treatment of these J6ers by judges and prosecutors, there won't be an appetite for the sort of retribution and consequences that we need.
You're right. I mean, once you have proven that a system can be corrupted such as this to destroy our fellow Americans, it must be razed to the ground. Much like every other, this has happened before in American history, where there are institutions that are antithetical to the Constitution, to the rights of Americans, and we do away with them. We dispatch them. And it's a wonderful trait, actually, in this country that we have the power to do that.
Well, thank goodness that we do have the power to do that. And thank you, Benny Johnson, for having Julie Kelly on and talking about that. Folks, we're going to close out here in a minute. But before we do, we've got a couple just breaking news announcements. Just yesterday, President Trump chose Susie Wiles to be his chief of staff. You may not be familiar with her, but she's been out there for a while doing a lot of stuff for President Trump. And she's also Pat Summerall's daughter, who, if you're my age, you remember him from sports on Saturday mornings. But she's a great selection. And that goes a long ways when the Democrats and the girls out there that supported Kamala Harris are saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, because you're anti-woman. Well, his chief of staff's a woman. He's also going to bring in Elon Musk, Robert Kennedy, and Tulsi Gabbard. They're all going to help him out. It's a great dynamic group that's going to lead us into the future. So with that, we're going to close out with a statement that President Trump has put out about exactly what he's going to do in the days after his inauguration. This is exciting, folks. Let's listen to this. Y'all have a great week.
It is my plan to dismantle the deep state and reclaim our democracy from Washington corruption once and for all, and corruption it is. First, I will immediately reissue my 2020 executive order restoring the president's authority to remove rogue bureaucrats, and I will wield that power very aggressively. Second, we will clean out all of the corrupt actors in our national security and intelligence apparatus, and there are plenty of them. The departments and agencies that have been weaponized will be completely overhauled so that faceless bureaucrats will never again be able to target and persecute conservatives, Christians, or the left's political enemies, which they're doing now at a level that nobody can believe even possible. Third, we will totally reform FISA courts, which are so corrupt that the judges seemingly do not care when they are lied to in warrant applications. So many judges have seen so many applications that they know were wrong, or at least they must have known. They do nothing about it. They're lied to. Fourth, to expose the hoaxes and abuses of power that have been tearing our country apart, we will establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to declassify and publish all documents on deep state spying, censorship, and corruption. And there are plenty of them. Fifth, we will launch a major crackdown on government leakers who collude with the fake news to deliberately weave false narratives and to subvert our government and our democracy. When possible, we will press criminal charges. Sixth, we will make every Inspector General's office independent and physically separated from the departments they oversee, so they do not become the protectors of the deep state. Seventh, I will ask Congress to establish an independent auditing system to continually monitor our intelligence agencies to ensure they are not spying on our citizens or running disinformation campaigns against the American people, or that they are not spying on someone's campaign like they spied on my campaign. Eighth, we will continue the effort launched by the Trump administration to move parts of the sprawling federal bureaucracy to new locations outside the Washington swamp. Just as I moved the Bureau of Land Management to Colorado, as many as 100,000 government positions could be moved out, and I mean immediately, of Washington to places filled with patriots who love America, and they really do love America. Ninth, I will work to ban federal bureaucrats from taking jobs at the companies they deal with that they regulate. So they deal with these companies and they regulate these companies, and then they want to take jobs from these companies. It doesn't work that way. Such a public display cannot go on. It's taking place all the time, like with Big Pharma. Finally, I will push a constitutional amendment to impose term limits on members of Congress. This is how I will shatter the deep state and restore government that is controlled by the people and for the people. Thank you very much.